I'm Paul Sung, and I edited and created the book, This Separated Isle, and I'm going to ask everybody to introduce themselves, starting with Ilisa.
Okay. Hi there, can you hear me? Yeah. My name's Ilisa Stack, documentary and portrait photographer, and I'll pass you along to Brooke.
My name's Brooke McMillan.
My name's Stina and I'm in this book, The Separated Isle.
I'm Margaret Mitchell, and I photograph Stina.
Thank you. So we'll keep it conversational. If anyone at any point wants to ask a question, raise your hand. I'll start off by just talking a bit about the book and the process and how we kind of make these things. So the idea was, to make a book about how, I suppose, separated, as the title says, it feels to live in the UK right now. For me, as somebody that grew up being biracial and working class, growing up in the 80s in the UK for me was very much always aware of how different I was, from being somebody from, lived on a council estate and then from a single parent family, a white working class family, and then going to school and being, experiencing racism. And for me that was tough because the people that were, racist to me were white working class kids, and I was from a white working class family. So growing up, I was very confused about my identity, didn't want to be the things I was, and it took me probably until I was, 13 years old to kind of accept and celebrate my background and who I was. And those experiences never really left me, of being different, of being an outsider. And a few years ago, looking around the UK and things like Brexit, and then latterly things like COVID, and things that divide society, things like Black Lives Matter, and things that we don't seem to agree on. And I think there's always been these issues in the world that we've not necessarily agreed on things, but I think social media really amplifies those differences. And so the book really is an exploration and an examination of how divided society is, but also trying to show where there is hope. And that I think is in a lot of young people, like these two fine people here. So the way that the book really works is each portrait has a different documentary photographer and has a different person who's a participant in the book. And how it kind of works is the photographer usually finds the person, and that they know what the rough theme of the book is. And in this case, it was about identity, it was about belonging, it was about opinions on things. And what we then do is the photographer usually interviews the person, we get a recording of that, and then as a team we transcribe the interview, and then we kind of try to get a story from it. So you're looking at about 700 words, and the rule is that it has to be in the person's own words. You can't put new words in, you can't break up sentences to create something that they didn't necessarily mean. And once that's done, we send it back to the participant, and we say, do you want to change anything? You're happy with what you said? And quite often they want to take bits out, or they want to add bits. And then it comes back to us, and then we look at it and we send it back so they get the final sign-off. And I like working like that because, as a documentary filmmaker, when you're sitting in an edit suite and you're crafting a film, you have quite a lot of power, and you're representing your truth as well as their truth. But this is a much more direct way of being able to say to somebody, are you happy with what you've done? Because in a film, you can't necessarily get everybody in to watch the cut of the film. It would take too long. So that's kind of how it works. I'm going to sort of start off by asking Margaret, how you know Stina and how you sort of, decided that, you two were going to work together.
Okay. I've known Stina since she was probably about 2 years old, because her mum Andrea is sitting at the back, and we've known each other from when our children have kind of grown up. So she's got another sister who's the same age as my son, so it's a kind of growing up within a community basically. I knew Stina from that, and I've been wanting to photograph. Sometimes I don't photograph people for a little bit, and I sort of see them as they're growing up, and I kind of would like to photograph them at some stage, but I want it to be the right reason for photographing a person. And when you came along with this project, I was already working on something around home and belonging, and I thought that this would fit straight into that, basically. So that's the kind of background to it. And I mean, I'll talk a little bit about the sort of the two main things, but I don't need to talk about them now, because I'll pass on about the two reasons that I was pulled in to actually photograph Stina.
Okay, and talk to us a bit, Stina, about how it felt to sit for a portrait and then to have to give an opinion and tell a story about and talk a bit about what you write about in the book.
I mean, obviously I'd known Margaret for a long time, and I knew she was like an amazing photographer, but when she asked me to take pictures with her, I was quite excited, because obviously I'd never done it before. So yeah, I was interested and I was excited, and then when the idea of the book came out, I was like, this is great, because then my voice can be heard, because that's what the whole book was about. So that's what I really enjoyed, working with Margaret, and I really enjoyed the idea of the book. So yeah, I was excited to be in the book.
Good, and thank you for being in it. Over to you.
So I've known Brooke for quite some time. Brooke appeared in a series that I created, documentary series, Out to Play, and I photographed Brooke for that, and so we started a real relationship then. Kept in touch a little bit. Brooke's mum's here as well, so I was able to keep sort of tabs on things that Brooke had been doing. But I was doing an artist residency in a school, and I bumped into Brooke's gran, and Brooke's gran had basically come across and told me that Brooke had been in the United Nations over in Geneva, and she was speaking about child poverty, and so this drew me into looking up this article in The Guardian, which I did. And it kind of coincided when Paul contacted me in regards to sort of to finding someone to photograph, and I just felt that what Brooke had to say in the article really was inspiring to me, and I thought she would be perfect. And so I got in touch with Tracy, Brooke's mum, to see how Brooke felt about her role and maybe becoming part of the book.
And Brooke, tell us a bit about the thing at the United Nations, how it came about and what you did.
So basically my school picked 4 kids, and I was lucky to be picked in that 4, and we basically just went, and there was this man, I forgot what his name was, and you just got to ask him questions. Like, I asked him why he was talking about children when children weren't involved, so they should start involving children in that.
I agree, yeah. I mean, do you feel as a young person that your voice is heard by people, the politicians, or do you feel, how would you like to be represented as a young person in politics?
Be able to be heard by people that you need to be heard from, especially if you need help.
Yeah, I mean, in your piece in the book, you talk a lot about, how it is to, not be heard. Do you think that the age of voting should be lowered, perhaps?
No, because you need to be 16 for a lot of things.
Yeah. So you wouldn't lower it to 16 from 18, or? No. Okay. And how was it being photographed? How did you find the process? Because the image that's in the book, which is this one, obviously I think there were about 6 or 7 different images that were selected. And have you seen them all? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Was this the one you liked best, or was there another one? Or?
It was that and a different one.
Yeah. And how did you work together to come up with the different scenarios?
It was kind of just based on the weather, really, because we get so many different weathers in the one day.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Scottish weather. And what I like about this portrait is you look really thoughtful, and when I look at it, I kind of think, I wonder what she was thinking. Do you remember what you were thinking?
I'm probably thinking it was very cold in that post because it was raining.
Yeah, okay. And back to you, Stina. So your image here. I think the way that the jacket's off is really intriguing. I find it's kind of like you look ready to have to challenge someone. I think, was that deliberate or?
So it's based on something that happens naturally. So I tried to take something that's natural in what happens with someone, the way they walk or the way they stand, things, something like that. And a lot of young people would have their jackets like this, maybe just one shoulder, or, you know, it wasn't always, it's not always fully off, but a lot of people would walk around like that. And I noticed it with Stina when we'd met before, that she would do this. And so I did, I mean, it is a set-up portrait, right. And it's taken down at the Children's Wood, its fuller title is Stina in the Children's Wood, and the Children's Wood is where her mum works. As started off as a volunteer, which was a community project, and then it was taken back so that the community could use that land. So it was quite important for me to go down to the Children's Wood to photograph her, because there was sort of two things that were pulling me in. So there was the dual nationality, and it was happening around this time of Brexit, which was, you know, I sort of look back about the timeline about when we were asked to do the project, and then when I photographed her, and it's quite a long process, you know, and I think that sometimes people don't realise that process can sometimes take, you know, 2 or 3 years sometimes. So it was, in 2019, I mean, Stina was going on to these sort of environmental marches. It was all the, what was it, Friday for Futures?
Yeah, Scottish Youth Strike, Climate Streets.
So there was lots of that happening. And there was also just all the stuff that was happening around, a lot of activism around Brexit. And so we were going on all these marches as well as my own family. My own son is dual national. He's half Dutch. And so there was these sort of two elements that I was trying to bring into that. And with the coat, there's a wee bit of tartan.
The Harrington,
so,
yeah.
And Stina can tell you about, you know, her own dual nationality. So without me telling you about that, you wouldn't know about it. But for me as a photographer, I was trying to bring in that element of the way that somebody stands, but also I knew that little slither of tartan was coming out.
Can you remember, Stina, when you were aware, when you were younger, that you had, you know, dual nationality, like a particular age, or being aware of being a little bit different maybe from other people?
I mean, because my dad went to work, it was just me and my mum at the start, and then me and both my sisters, but basically she just spoke German with me the whole time. So that's basically what I was used to, and then obviously we went to Germany a lot, we still do now, but yeah, I remember, and now people always say to me like, oh, it's really cool that you're bilingual and all this stuff, and yeah, it is really, because I have 2 homes, like as I say in the book. But like, I don't think necessarily I was different, because we know a lot of people, like a lot of my friends have like German parents and stuff as well. It's quite common like where I live. So I don't think I was different, but I did grow up with like both nationalities really.
And how are, you know, people when Brexit happened, you know, a few years back, what was the reaction of, like, you know, your friends, people at school, people of your sort of age?
I mean, I think I was just a bit confused, because everyone I knew was like, well, no, we're not going to vote for Brexit, obviously, because, I don't know, I thought it was just such a stupid idea, really. I was like, why do people want to leave so badly? Like, what is so wrong with, like, Europe that they want to leave? And then, obviously, that was, like, all my family over there, and now it's more difficult to go and visit. So, yeah, I think I was just angry, really, and, like, confused about what was wrong with the European Union and why people wanted to leave.
Yeah, I mean, do you, as a young person, feel powerless? How do you feel, you know, when decisions like Brexit that, you know, people in Scotland didn't vote for, you know, was something that came from England, really? How do you feel being young, and, you know, do you feel you have a voice? Do you feel that you can be heard?
I remember we would do like mock votes in class and stuff like that, and everyone in my class and all the other classes, we all voted to stay. So I was like, well, maybe if we were allowed to vote, or maybe if we had been older, then we wouldn't have left. And obviously for me, and that would have been ideal, really, to not leave. Mm-hmm. But I don't feel unheard. Like, after all the strikes and everything, I feel like people are listening more, but yeah, it was just a bit annoying, really.
Yeah. And in terms of the environment, because that's, I think, probably the pressing concern of our time, do you feel, you know, things like COP26 are actually making significant change, or do you think that, you know, is it too late, or is there still time, do you think, to actually reverse, you know, a lot of this damage?
I mean, like, scientifically, I think it's a bit too late, but I think it's good that people are starting to listen up now, and people are trying to make a change. I feel like COP26 was a lot different from other climate strikes that I've been to, because I went like to the very first ones, and there was like not a lot of people, but it was all people that like really wanted to make change, whereas COP26 was just like, I don't know, it was just like a trend really, everyone went, and it was still really fun, and obviously there was a lot of people there, but it was different from the first ones where it was just like a couple of people.
I mean, I remember seeing something on the news that for the people, the delegates that would come to visit, there was some transport thing. What was it where, normally you can't get that in Glasgow, you can go across the buses and the subway and the train, but for COP26 they made it a thing. Is that now a thing for everyone, or has it just been...
I don't think so.
No.
I mean, obviously we have free bus travel under 22, but I don't think it's like with everything.
Okay. So to talk a bit about the portrait. I mean, what is it like when you have your picture taken and a moment is kind of framed forever and then it's in a book? I mean, what's been the reaction from people that you know?
I mean, I was actually surprised like that people I knew bought the book. Like random people would just send me a picture and I'd be like, oh, it's me. Like I didn't know people that I knew were actually going to buy it and like see me in it, it was quite cool actually. And the picture itself, I don't know, people always tell me that like I look really determined, but I feel like I just look a bit lost, do you know what I mean? I'm like, why am I here? But like I really like it, I love the background and everything, and obviously the picture itself is really cool, but I don't see the determination.
I think you look tough. I think you look like you're questioning things, as you are, as you understandably would be. And I really like the jacket off thing. I didn't know that it was a trend. In my mind, it was like you're ready for action sort of thing, like because mods wear these jackets, the Harringtons, and if you see films like Quadrophenia where they're getting into fights with the rockers and stuff, it's kind of like you look like you're ready for a scrap or something like that.
Yeah, it's my dad's jacket.
Right.
He stole it.
Brilliant. Let's go back to you two. So, Ilisa, tell us a bit about the portrait, and obviously there's some weather dependent stuff, but when you look back and you're editing and you're looking at the portrait, what was it? I think, was this your favourite one, or?
Yeah, I'm the exact same with Brooke. I had two. There was two that stood out for me. This one I absolutely love. I do really like the other one too, but this was, I just love that she's behind the door and she was so comfortable here. And for me, that was, she was so relaxed. We did have a bunch of Scottish weather. We had all sorts happening, as well as COVID, because like when we were shooting, you were right in the restrictions, so we had to make sure we were 2 metres away. Brooke's mum actually was my lighting technician. She had the reflector because I like to shoot natural light. However, we did round about the portrait. We tried a few different locations. Brooke had told me, I asked her where she wanted to be. Where in her area meant a lot to her. That she might want to be shot in. And so we went to a few locations. We went to somewhere where a fire had occurred, near where flats were. We had went there, and we also went to spare ground field. The rain came, and we decided to go back to near where Brooke stays. So this is actually Brooke's Close. And there was just a real, even though it was bucketing down, there was just a real calmness when Brooke was here. It was, she was like zoned into her. It's like looking at the picture and saying, what are you actually thinking? Is it that she wants the rain to stop? But we had the door open. We tried a few different shots. Obviously, we were still keeping our distance. But yeah, this one, I love the fact that you can see the ball prints. You can tell that it's a lived-in close. There's people here. There's a real sense of community, and I feel for Brooke. And for the picture, for me taking the picture, I wanted a real sense of Brooke, and I felt this definitely showed that, portrayed that.
Definitely. I mean, what has been the reaction of people that you know to it?
So my pals haven't really seen the book because I don't want them to. But all my family are really happy for me, and it was quite exciting to be in it. So.
Yeah. And is this something that you'd be keen to do, to write more? I mean, do you know what you want to do when you're older? Have you got to figure that out yet, or?
I figured out what I want to be, which is good because I just did my options in S2, so I'm moving up. So I've tested options for school.
So is that all the subjects that you have to choose? And but do you know then what you want to do when you leave school, or
Yeah,
what can you tell us, or you don't have to?
I want to be a nursery teacher.
His nursery teacher. Okay. And in terms of, when you look at that picture now, I think, over 20, 30 years from now, I think it's so wonderful to have something captured like that. And as you were saying, I think Alan McCready, who's a photographer, I know, when he looked at the portrait, he said one of the things he really likes about it is that the glass hasn't been cleaned, that it's real, it's lived in, because he said some people would have cleaned it and would have, but it's perfect like that, I think, definitely. Okay, has anybody got any questions? Don't be shy. For anyone here? Any questions via Facebook? Who's doing the Facebook thing? No? Right, okay, well, what I'm going to do is ask you guys more questions then. So, in terms of what you're working on at the moment, Margaret, do you want to tell us a bit about, your work and what you're up to?
I've been working on a really long-term project at the moment for the past probably 3 years, and I've been looking at people who've at some stage found themselves without a home. So I've been working on that, and it's a sort of finished project now. So I'm just kind of pulling all these little strands, and I've worked through a group called Time for Change at Shelter, and I've been involved with them for the past 3 years. And also with other sort of individuals and through other agencies and things like that. And I've worked in sort of various ways to try and represent that emotional impact of what that means to people and how that carries on, and that kind of ongoingness of it all, basically. That if you have experienced homelessness at some stage, that it's not just something that is instantly, doesn't disappear easily, even in your own mind, when it's, even if you have 4 walls afterwards. So I've been working on that. It's quite an intense individual project, with various people, and it's been all over Scotland as well. So that's kind of what I've worked on. And also I've worked with stuff with a lot of young people. I work with children and young people a lot. So I carried on work up at the G20 Youth Festival, which is up in Maryhill, which is connected to the Children's Wood. And so I've worked with them quite a little bit. And so really along these sort of themes of home and belonging, and they're all kind of tied in together.
Yeah, because pretty much most of your work always has a social purpose to it, and obviously that's very deliberate. When you were, studying photography, was that always the plan, that you would make work that speaks to people's experience of social issues? And what made you choose that rather than thinking, right, I want to be, I don't know, like a wildlife photographer?
Okay, I was rubbish at that. I'm not very good at it. I'm only good at it, well, hopefully, with people. I love documentary photography. So when I started off as a photographer, I was very much, when I was studying, I was pulled into documentary, into storytelling. And I was very much quite a traditional documentary photographer in the beginning. And then I kind of moved into more environmental portraiture. I like to have that kind of interaction, that collaborative kind of feeling of working with people that a portrait brings. And I feel like I kind of stayed in that kind of area for quite a long time. And recently obviously I've worked with my own family in that, and what that allowed me to do was go back to those documentary roots a wee bit more, and that's been a really good process, to do that.
And Stina, have you got any in terms of like being photographed? What do you know what you want to do when you're older? Have you worked all that stuff out yet? Are you still finding your way through it?
No, I actually have no idea what I want to do. I've just left school, but I think I'm just going to take like a year out and see what I want to do, because I don't want to go to uni or college yet, because there's no point, because I have no idea what I want to do. I just drop out. So yeah, I'm just going to travel a bit maybe and stuff like that, which would be really good.
When you spoke to people from Mexico, did they ask about Scotland, and what was their perception of Scotland, and then what do they think about Brexit, things like that?
I
think in Mexico, I think first of all it was difficult sometimes for them to work out what they were saying. So there was a little barrier with language. As in terms of Brexit, there wasn't necessarily too much talk because we went really rural in Mexico, so there wasn't really necessarily TVs and things like that. It wasn't, the Tribatarian Tribe is the tribe sort of that John was running with, so they come from the canyons, they stay there, and they come out from caves and things where they live, so they are not really aware of things like Brexit and things like that. More the States probably would be, there was political, but on the trip down people tended to say, let's not talk politics, so that kind of was the emphasis in the journey, let's not discuss it because it can create conflict maybe.
No, it's kind of one of those things that sometimes just not talking about it is easier than having those arguments, I mean, because you've been about on that, how do you see, or do you think, has the world changed, pre-COVID, post-COVID? Have you noticed ways in which things are different, not in terms of, the way of wearing masks and things, but are people different now?
I think people are. I think people are a little scared still to come out, still to be in spaces. I think that the way that we communicate with the world is slightly different. And in some ways I do see improvements, so things like for QR codes and how those can, they can take you straight to websites and things like that. All these things, I see things like that as an improvement. But yeah, I definitely see that there's struggles. There was a lady, I was speaking with a lady and she was talking. I was doing a project at Cunningar Loop with Robert over there, but there was a lady and she was just talking about being on a bench, and she said, families used to all sit in they used to sit on a bench, everybody would just come along and somebody would sit and move over and everybody would sit, but now nobody really wants to sit on a bench if there's another family there, so there's still there's still a real scare in the air, but it's definitely getting better.
Brooke, for you, if you can remember, how life was before the pandemic and how was it after, do you see ways in which things have changed?
Things have changed slightly since COVID, because now you don't have to wear masks in schools and shops. You can actually just go out and enjoy your time instead of, you only have this amount of time to be out and then you have to be back in the house, back isolating again.
I mean, during the pandemic when everyone had to do learning at home, how did you find all that, to have to go through that rather than being in school? Did you miss school? Did you like being at home more?
I probably would have preferred being at school, because watering stuff in the house, because when I get everything from primary school to do that in the house, and then we were in like a month or something in high school, and then sent home with just iPads where I couldn't get on like half my classes or more. Like on a Friday I would only be getting 2 out of the 6 of my classes done.
So you're much happier being in school then? Yeah, I was thinking when I was a kid whether I'd have probably preferred to be in school or not, and I think probably I'd have preferred not to be in school, but different times then. How about you, Stina? Like, what do you see being different, pre and post COVID?
Yeah, I agree with everything everyone said about school as well. I feel like at the start of Corona I was like, oh yeah, this is great, like a wee holiday, do you know what I mean? But then after a while, when we actually, I was doing my hires at the time, so I was like having to teach myself the whole hire course for 6 hires, so it was really difficult, and it's like easy to say, oh I love being off school, and at the start I was like, oh yeah, it's going to be a nice couple of weeks off, but then it was like 2 years of teaching myself hires, so yeah, it was quite difficult.
Yeah, and Margaret, for you, how has the world changed in your experience of going out and making work again?
It was very difficult because I was just at this, not really at the start, but I was kind of in the middle of doing a project when the first lockdown happened. So a lot of stuff was put on hold, but a lot of it moved online, so that communication or sort of the building relationships with people sort of period was extended, before you actually met them and actually photographed them. And in Glasgow here we were in quite an extended lockdown, for a long period of time. So we couldn't even travel without our region, so it was really, really difficult to make work during that period. I did manage to do stuff like in the summer where I was photographing the outdoors. And that was great. That was with young people, you know, so I was photographing them within that sort of environment just up the road from where I stay. So everything was quite local, everything sort of got pulled into work in that kind of way. Now, I mean, I've just been on the subway with loads of people, so it all feels a little bit different. You know, I'm sitting here with a wee bit of a tickly cough as well, and I'm thinking, oh, I better tell people I've tested, I'm fine, you know, there's nothing wrong. And it's true, I think that it's very difficult. I actually photographed Stina before the pandemic, just I think it was in August 2019, and she was just turned 15. Would that be right? Just turned 15?
Like a month later.
And then we went into that, you know, just a little bit later. So it feels like everything that we were thinking about at that time, you know, I was sort of concentrating on all these kind of this activism that was happening, you know, around Stina going out to the sort of environmental issues and going on those marches and going on the Brexit things. And then everything really changed. It really changed quite quickly and quite suddenly, you know. So, and I'm wondering if I photographed during it, if I'd done a different thing, and I think I would have. And I think we would have maybe photographed in a different way, because I think for young people during that lockdown, it was incredibly difficult, especially the first lockdown. It was, I think we're still having the fallout in their lives from that, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I think we've all been through a very traumatic experience, and I think, you know, the consequences won't be known for some time.
Yeah.
Thinking, you know, today there's the local elections, and I want to ask you first, Stina. I mean, are you old enough to vote yet, or
Yeah.
you are? I mean, have you voted today, or?
No, I was at work from 9 till 5, but I'll go on the way home.
I mean, generally, what's your view on, you know, politicians and on politics? Is it something that you feel engaged with? Obviously on, like, you know, a level of campaigning or protesting, but in terms of Westminster politics, you know, what's your view on those things?
I mean, I don't really know who to trust, because they all say the same thing, really. Like, they all say, oh, we want to help the climate crisis, oh, we want to help housing, blah, 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 blah. But I don't know, it's just confusing. I don't know what they all say, but obviously none of them really make a difference. Yeah, I don't know. I don't like all the politicians in Westminster. Yeah.
Is that generally a thing amongst, like, people that you know, like your friends and stuff, or is it a more personal view? I mean, what's the general temperature of how people around your age feel about politics?
Yeah, I think a lot of my friends, like, have the same opinion as me. Like, that's what we have, like, lots of things in common. But yeah, I think that they agree, like, people in power are just not really doing anything. As I said in the book, I just feel like it's kind of up to young people to make the difference.
Yeah. And Brooke, you know, are you, as somebody that can't vote yet, looking forward to voting, or are you kind of put off by them? What's your thoughts?
I'm in the middle because I want to vote, but then I don't want to vote at the same time.
Do you know who you'd vote for? You're still kind of figuring it out?
No clue who I'd vote for.
Okay. Has anybody got any questions? There we go.
A comment, such an appropriate pairing between Ilisa and Margaret in terms of your work, but also your participants who are really collaborators. You know, you just didn't go in and take your photograph and then leave again. There's a long-term relationship at work there, which is quite fascinating. And it's such appropriate entries in the book, Paul. So really, really good choices. But in both of your respective projects, I'm thinking of Margaret, you were continued to work a bit during lockdown in terms of keeping in contact with some of the people that you're working with in terms of the vulnerable housing situation, which is a very pertinent issue. And Ilisa, good to play. You know, that should have a comeback now, you know, because it's got added relevance post-COVID, the Out to Play project. You never really said much about that. as an affirmative project, but there's no real story in there in terms of the postcodes, which again is very relevant to the subject matter of the book. Just tell us just briefly about that.
Okay. It's Out to Play basically when it came from my uni project. When I started realising that we didn't necessarily see children playing in the streets that we used to, like Oscar Mazzaroli, Thomas Annan, so I kind of found myself in real research, trying to find out where are the kids, how are they playing, what are they doing. I found myself at the Mitchell Library, and so I was trying to find documents and records of children and where they played, and the only references I really could find was if you knew the photographer or you knew the series like the Gorble Boys, like real famous sort of imagery, then you could find links. But other than that, if I wanted to know what kids in Kilmarnock played, I couldn't find anything really. Or in Kelvin Grove, what were the kids playing with, and there just didn't seem to be any links. So I seen that as missing, and that's in my practice as well. That's something I've discovered, is that I really have a real relevance in looking for things that maybe we haven't quite realised aren't quite here yet, because it's still, but kids are playing, but when we look at it, are they really, where are they playing? Obviously COVID has a big impact on that, but for me, Out to Play, it's documenting. I decided to document children within their postcode areas so that we have a real historical documentation for the future of our children.
And because Malcolm's obviously championed that, then you're going to put the work on here then, is that an offer?
Well, watch this space.
That's good to hear. Before we wrap up then, I'm going to ask each of you the same question. And that question is, where do you see there being hope? Because I think hope is important. Where do you see that, whether it's in your community, whether it's wherever? Starting with you, Margaret.
First up. Probably, I would definitely say that hope comes through those relationships that people build locally, through those communities, as you sort of mentioned there. And then taking those sort of things that happen at that local level and pushing that out. But also, people are sort of becoming very active in trying to go to marches and trying to actually show what they're thinking. And I think that actually going and demonstrating is actually really important. And I don't feel like we demonstrate enough in this country, that we actually go out and we sit there and we complain about things, but maybe we need to go out and actually, shout a wee bit louder in the streets. And I think that's maybe, in order for it to change, we have to, maybe that change comes locally and moves up into a wider... Sorry, I didn't finish my sentence.
I do think hope comes from young people, because I've seen it firsthand how willing they are to stand up for what they think is right, and it gives me hope really. If the young people that I know were in charge, then I feel like much better things would be going on in the world.
If you and them had to form a government and something like that, and if there was your first day of business and several things that you could change, what would they be? You do anything because you're in charge.
I feel like it would be tackling the climate crisis, to be honest. I mean, I'm just remembering primary school when they'd be like, if you were the headmaster, what would you do? And everyone's like, have a swimming pool in the playground and stuff. But obviously that would be great. But I feel like I'm just putting the earth first, to be honest, because it is running out of time. Not to be morbid, but I genuinely think we need to take action.
Yeah. Brooke, where do you find hope? Where do you see it? It can be in anything, but where is hope for you, do you think? No? That's not the answer we want. No, that's fine. Take us out with something hopeful.
Oh gosh, pressure. I think I see hope in community. I see hope, it's there. I see it in the young people, I see it in the book, I see it in opportunities that we give to people. So that's where I see hope.
That's good. Did you say, John, there was a question or something, because you were pointing at your laptop? So.
Yeah, so we've got a question from Leah on Facebook who says, really beautiful portraits. I wanted to ask Stina and Brooke if having the portraits taken made them interested in photography, or if it was something they enjoyed doing already, and if they think photography can be
Okay, we'll start with Stina. Did you hear that? Or
Yeah. I feel like it did actually. When me and Margaret were taking the pictures, she was asking me about if I was interested in photography and everything, and I think I learned a lot because of all the different cameras you use, like all the film and all the whole process really of picking out pictures and.
Because we did it twice. I actually photographed you in May and then in August again, and obviously we didn't select some of them, and some were selected. So
yeah, so I feel like it definitely did. It made me think about photography, and it made me see like what the process is, and if I would maybe like to do that. I think.
And are you still thinking about it, or?
Yeah, I mean, I do enjoy taking photos. I don't think. I am interested in art and like I love these exhibitions and things like that, but I'm not sure if I'm like talented enough to be a photographer. I don't know.
well, I think that we put a lot of pressure on people at a young age when they leave school. I didn't start studying till I was 21, so I think that it's sometimes a good thing to take that wee bit of time out.
Definitely. Brooke, you got any interest in being a photographer, or do you think it was a useful tool for social issues, the environment?
So I like photographers, but I don't think I would want to be one because it just seems too stressful for me.
Were you stressing out on this?
Am I so stressed?
Okay. Any more questions? Was there a question here somewhere? Yeah?
I'll ask five questions. When you travel abroad, which things when you look at, we're all from Scotland, but which things when you look at abroad reminds you of Scotland and why?
Who wants to start with that? Which things when you're abroad reminds you of Scotland? Margaret, do you want to go first?
I think probably the hills, or other people would call them mountains, now we call them the hills. So that kind of thing would always remind me. I lived abroad for 4 years, and I actually had a real homesickness for Scotland, which is quite interesting because when you then come back, you kind of it doesn't always feel the same way. And I was reading the book, and actually the photograph I think that Gina did, there was a man in there who talked about how you always feel more Scottish when you're away than when you're actually here. But for me, I mean, it was obviously people came up with cliches all the time about what being Scottish was when I was away. It was always things like the tartan and the castles and all that. But yeah, where I was didn't have very many hills. But those are I really missed those kind of things.
Stina, what about you?
I feel like Scotland's really unique actually. Whenever I go away, like where we were in Germany a couple of weeks ago, and when we were on the train, my dad was like, "Oh, it's just so rubbish here. Like everything's the same. It's just not like Scotland, like the hills and the scenery." And I feel like Scotland's really different. It's like amazing. I think the landscape here. But yeah, people always get really excited when you're away and you tell people you're not from there. Like they're like, "Oh my god, can you speak?" And like I feel like it's quite sweet that and people like talk about Scotland and people really want to visit whenever I speak to people when I'm away. But yeah, I can't think of anything that reminds me of it.
For me, when I go away, it's the sea, because I live in Portobello in Edinburgh near the beach. So every morning I walk my dog on the beach and I look out, and obviously I'm looking at Fife, so it's not like I'm looking at New York or somewhere, but I look there and I always am reminded of being somewhere different. So when I go somewhere, often if I see water, a body of water will remind me of Scotland, because Scotland's now home, and Portobello and the sea and all of that. What do you think when you're away from Scotland says to you, Scotland? Anything?
Probably if I was to see something tartan, probably that would remind me of Scotland.
Yeah. Shortbread?
Yes, shortbread.
Shortbread in a tartan metal box. Double points. And Scotland for you?
For me, it's the whole of Scotland. Live and breathe the country, but it's like I love the East Coast. The East Coast for me has my sort of I love thinking about the East Coast and Anstruther, Cale. It takes me back to childhood memories. So when I think of Scotland, I think of childhood. I think of those things. But obviously the hills and the mountains are absolutely amazing. But yeah, it's the East Coast that it takes me home.
Thank you. Any final questions? Last chance? No. Okay, well, please join me in thanking all of our wonderful guests. Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thanks very much, Paul. Just to thank Paul for doing wonderful talk here. This is the third event Paul's participated in as part of this exhibition. He did give a gallery tour. And also a Q&A at the GFT following a film that himself and Celeste Bell had made. He's in this portrait here. Celeste is the daughter of polystyrene, musician in a band called X-Ray Specs. Wonderful film, look it up. You can get it online. And you also find more information about Paul there as well. So he's more than a pretty face, he's quite talented as well. So Brooke and Stina, that's you immortalised now in photography. If you do want to come in sometime, my colleague Theo can give you an introduction in the dark room, if that can ignite an interest in traditional methods of making photographs. So you can get in touch with us should you want to do that. So thanks again, Lisa and Margaret, great to have you back in the gallery again, and we will see more of that in due course. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.